Hi, I'm Tim Bradner. Welcome to Capital Views. And welcome today to Jared Kosin, the CEO of the Alaska Hospital and Healthcare Association. Jared, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure being here.
Jared, it's been kind of a tough 2 years or so for hospitals and all healthcare providers with COVID and everything. And we heard a lot about staffing shortages and kind of burnout and things like that. But what's the latest? How are you guys doing these days?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Tim. I mean, this is something that every industry is facing. We have worker shortages really across all sectors. I mean, we see it in the summer and tourism season when you're trying to get into a restaurant. We see it in everyday life when we're trying to get goods and services. And unfortunately, in the hospital and healthcare sector, the healthcare industry, we are experiencing pretty extreme shortages, something that's not really new to us, but it's taken on kind of a new face or a new twist, especially coming out of a pandemic when there's so much fatigue. So to answer your question directly, we have some pretty severe shortages up here in Alaska, and we're really projected to lead the country with vacancies, which are staffing shortfalls in the near future. So to answer your question, we are definitely struggling when it comes to staffing.
Now, Jared, I know that a lot of hospitals and other providers can fill their temporary staffing needs with out-of-state. They're called travelers, nurse travelers, and I know that's not a long-term solution. But is there any hospital that's actually so short of staff that it's probably there are real operational or care providing problems?
Yeah, well, I think it holds true for everyone. Everyone is using travelers in Alaska. It's just a fact. And when you look at our system and our pipeline, I mean, to really address worker shortages is a long-term strategy. And that's the stuff we're doing with our members. That's the way the industry's going. And then when you kind of get into the legislative sphere, you're really looking kind of in the immediate steps, the immediate future, what you can do. But you're absolutely right. This is a long-term issue and a long-term deficit. If you look at our output when it comes to kind of our worker pipeline, if you look at our accredited schools, I mean, just take nursing, for example. If you look at the accredited nursing schools in Alaska, which gives us Alaska-based nurses, we're only producing about 324 nurse graduates a year. If you look at the healthcare industry based on growth and churn and the number of nurses we need to find each year just to be able to provide services and meet basic demand, the answer is 1,500. We need to find 1,500 people, but we're only producing just over 300. So you can imagine that's a huge hole. And if you look at other position types, key position types, if you start factoring in respiratory therapists, CNAs, other positions like that, we're only training about 13% of the workforce we actually need. So when you're dealing with that type of deficit and those types of numbers, you are really relying on out-of-state workforce coming in. And unfortunately, there's such a high demand for these travelers that it's a challenge to get them here. And if you factor in other things like time to license and time to place, we are running really significant vacancy rates across not only hospitals, but nursing homes. And to really get at what you asked me, is this affecting care delivery? It is. I mean, it is because if you take a nursing home, for instance, there's units. You have a number of beds or rooms available for residents to stay there. Well, if you're having trouble staffing, you can't have all your units open, and you have to basically shrink your size. But at the same time, you're paying way more for labor because we have to go find people out of state, essentially. So your expenses are going up, inflation's gone up, and your ability to actually provide services has gone down. So not only does that reduce your ability to provide care, it also puts financial stress out there. So we are absolutely seeing an effect on service delivery and finances as well.
Now, Jared, you're speaking right now about nursing homes in particular, but what happens if there's no space available? Are just patients left in the acute care hospitals or taking up bed waiting for nursing home beds?
Yeah, it's that's the problem. And so when you look at healthcare, we're an interconnected web. And if one piece of this web or continuum starts to feel stress or fail, then it's going to have a ripple effect across the entire system. And that's what we see in the post-acute environment. I know, we work very closely with our nursing homes. Same thing is true for assisted living. Same thing is true for home health and hospice. Same thing is true for behavioral health. All these post-acute, meaning services outside the inpatient environment are so stressed and constrained by workforce challenges, budgetary issues, really providers being able to provide services. It's so constrained right now that basically, if you need services and there's nowhere for you to go, you're going to go to a hospital. And once you're in the hospital, when you don't need services anymore in there, there's no way for you to get out. You can't discharge or step out to a lower level of care. So we're basically funneling everybody up into the most expensive environment of care in our entire healthcare system, which drives up the costs. It takes up those inpatient resources, those beds, and we're using them for people who don't need to be there, but there's nowhere else for them to go. So when other people need those services or are more critical in nature, it becomes very challenging to provide those services. And then on top of that, you have less staff, so you have a less of ability to actually deliver the services. So it's really coming at us from all angles, and we have a significant backup in the system.
Now, Jared, in terms of the worker shortage, both in nurses, but I guess the same in the nursing home and assisted living, how much of the shortage, like the 1,500 nurses we need to hire each year, how much of that is due to turnover, replacing people we've lost?
It is the churn rate. We have a workforce analysis that kind of goes into detail on the growth and churn rate. And that would do it more justice, but it's a significant factor. I mean, the job is exhausting. It does turn over quite a bit. These jobs do, but they're also really good opportunities. They're good paying. There's tons of jobs out there. Really, a big part of the problem and what is causing some of these issues, and what if you look at why we're kind of running at such a high vacancy, we're doing ourselves no favors when it comes to being able to recruit people up here and place them into their positions. And one example would be licensing. So if you look at the nurse position, right now, unlike most other states, it takes about 3 months to get a nurse license. 3 months. Nurses could get a job anywhere in the country. When you tell them it's going to take them 3 months to get a license, we are seeing people pass. They don't want to come up here. And so one thing we can do to kind of address these things and address that churn rate is we need to not only address it on the pipeline side to increase output of homegrown nurses, but we got to make it easier to get people up here. And one way that other states are doing that is reciprocity. Recognize licenses that are valid and exist in other states and welcome them here. And on the nursing profession in particular, there is a reciprocity among 39 other states and jurisdictions. It's called a Nurse Licensure Compact, where they all have the same standard for acquiring a license. And once you get that license, then you can practice across all 39 states and jurisdictions, across state lines. But each of those individual states, the way you practice, how it's overseen, who has authority over it, that all stays with the state. So it's really just taking our current licensing process and standardizing it with everyone else. That is the type of thing where you can take a 3-month licensing process and turn it into 2 weeks and really bring a lot of relief. And I'm going to add one more thing for you, Tim. When you talk about opportunities and what to do with all of this, and we talked about the churn rate, the healthcare profession in Alaska, the industry has the highest conversion rate of out-of-state residents to in-state residents, meaning for every 4 people that come up here from out-of-state for a healthcare job, 1 of them stays and becomes a permanent resident. So we really do need to make it easier to get people up here because we have so many jobs to go around. Everyone that comes up here, we have a good chance of keeping them. And I think that's pretty important.
Well, that's a good chance to build our workforce. Well, Jared, thanks. Interesting. We'll revisit some of these topics, and I'm sure the legislature is going to be dealing with a lot of this. But thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate the opportunity.
Take care. Thank you.